Hello, welcome. My name is Jo, and today we are going to discuss all the books that I read in October. In October, I primarily read from two authors, so I am going to group their books together. So the first book that I read was Familiar Things by Hwang Sok-young. This was a random selection at the library. I have been trying to occasionally just browse the library and pick up a whole bunch of books that I have never heard of, because that is how I used to find like all of my books, and I have missed doing that, so I'm trying to incorporate that into my routine, and this was a resounding success. This is translated from Korean, and it is about a young teenage boy who moves with his mother to an island called Flower Island that is basically a dump, like a recycling center kind of, but also a landfill essentially. So you are following the main character as he kind of finds some community there, and also it talks about the conditions on the island. Based on context clues, I believe that it was based in the 80s. I wouldn't say that this is preachy in any way. I think it was just kind of a very honest look at our consumption and what is required to sustain it. If I had to like sum up this book, I would say it is like there is no away. I don't know if you guys have seen I've seen it mentioned online, just kind of the idea of we don't throw things away. Like, there is no away. It all goes somewhere. Someone has to deal with it. And even after everyone thinks that they're done dealing with it, like once it's in a landfill or it's been incinerated or whatever, there are still consequences to the planet and to people from all of the things that we throw away. So anyway, like I said, this is not really preachy. It's not like a moral necessarily, but it is also, you know, really thought-provoking. And I also think that it's really beautiful. It's contemplative. It's very quiet. Enjoyed this so much that I promptly reserved every book that my library had from this author. And so I have several more to discuss here. The next one that I read was At Dusk. This is similar to Familiar Things. It is more modern and I would say less vivid. It discusses development, gentrification, and working conditions in Korea, particularly for part-time and off-the-books laborers, which from what I understand is an extremely massive issue in South Korea. I didn't emotionally connect with this one quite as much as I did with Familiar Things, but I still thought that it was a very good read. I liked the different narrators of this. You kind of hear from someone who has kind of fallen through the cracks of traditional labor, as well as someone who would be considered a success story, and kind of what goes along with that of maybe losing some of your humanity in adopting that bootstraps mentality. If I had read this one first, I'm not sure that I would have been so motivated to seek out his other works, but I did really like this one as well. We escalated very quickly to his next book, Princess Bari. This book packs an enormous emotional punch. It is about borders, about colonialism and empire, particularly Britain and the US. It starts with the story of a young girl in the famine that happened in North Korea in the 90s and follows her through multiple migrations and immigrations. I believe all of his books so far that I have read would be considered magical realism. I really hate the term magical realism. I don't use it myself, but just to let you know, they are, and this is the most, I think. Maybe. I would encourage you to not worry about it at all. If you are someone, particularly a white Westerner who discounts books for magical realism, I would encourage you to self-reflect and think about why that is, and maybe don't do that. But anyway, that's a sidebar. I did find the first half of this book, the parts set in North Korea and China, a little bit stronger than the second part, which happens in the West. I think that he kind of took on this issue of like borders and migration and how awful and exploitative that is. And I really liked that he did that, but I think that he stepped into stories that weren't his own, and I think you can tell. I don't think that necessarily he did a bad job, although that's not for me at all to decide. I think that you can tell that the first part is more personal for him, maybe. This might just be me reading into it, but regardless, I absolutely loved this book, It was heartbreaking, but it also was very beautiful. I really hate like trauma porn and things that like really you can tell that they are just working for every tear that they can get out of you. I think that's exploitative, both of the people whose stories you're telling and of your reader. I am fine with honest sadness, but I don't like it when I feel like I'm being worked, and this was very far from that. I think I read these in the perfect order. Like I said, if I'd read this first, I'm not sure that I would have been motivated to specifically seek out his other works, but I think that reading this one first and then working my way up to this one was kind of the perfect escalation of emotion, if you will. And this is not part of this wrap up because I haven't finished it yet, but this is the one that I am currently reading, and it also follows this escalation. I did that accidentally, but I'm gonna take credit for it anyway. Then I finished Open Water by Caleb Azuma Nelson. I did talk about this in a little weekend vlog that I had, but I absolutely loved this book. It was so beautiful and so rich. It is the story of a young man whose family is from Ghana living in London, and kind of his journey as he deals with both the stresses and joys of being a young Black person in a white supremacist culture, and how that affects his mental health and his relationships. It was beautiful. It was incredibly sad, and this blurb calls it a love song to Black art and thought, and I would definitely say that that's a perfect description. It is like an ode to Black art for sure. Highly recommend. It's very short. It is emotional, but again, in just a very honest way. And then I went on an audiobook spree of reading Keiyo Higashino's books. Definitely his most well-known is The Devotion of Suspect X. These are thriller mysteries translated from Japanese, and I had wanted to read it for a while, and I have been super picky with audiobooks lately. This is not super relevant, but basically I had a job for about 2 years where most of the time I could listen to things while I was doing, tasks that didn't involve words. So I burned myself out on everything, on podcasts, on audiobooks, on music, but I also didn't want to stop listening to them because then that's really boring. So the past 6 months, I would say, I've had to just pick up and put down audiobooks at will as they suited my current sensibilities. So anyway, thrillers seem to work really well for my audiobook consumption right now. So he has 2 series. So I read the first series, which starts with Devotion of Suspect X. So this book is kind of the story of 2 kind of warring geniuses, basically, who used to be classmates. One of them is helping with a police investigation of a murdered man, and the other one is helping this man's kind of estranged ex-wife and daughter. And so they are kind of trying to out-scheme each other. Almost all of these books are quite different, I would say, from most American thrillers that you're gonna read, in that it's more of a puzzle. Some of these books you know who did it, but you don't know how. Some of them you're not quite sure who did it. It's very much like a mind game versus the whodunit. So one of the geniuses continues the rest of the series. There are 3 more books in this series, I believe, but I've only read 2 more of them, so I've read 3 in this series total because that's what my library had. The second is Salvation of a Saint. In this one, a man who is about to leave his wife is found poisoned at home. They have no idea who could have done it. The wife was on the other side of the country, and bring in the genius. I did like it. It was a little bit boring, but, it was okay. The third book was A Midsummer's Equation. I did not like this book at all. In this one, you're in a coastal town in Japan, and there's an environmental movement that's happening there to save the coast from some kind of offshore mining. So there are people traveling to this place for this, including the genius dude, and someone dies, and there's mystery surrounding that. I felt like he was trying to send some kind of message here about how environmentalists don't try to compromise with industry or something. I don't know, there was some weird subplot going on with that. And just the whole mystery, I didn't buy it at all. I get it that you're supposed to be putting together all the puzzle pieces, but like to me it seemed like he was drawing conclusions out of thin air. So yeah, I didn't like this one at all. If my library gets the last book as an audiobook, I will probably read it, but this author and this series in particular is not something that I think I would spend my time physically reading, just because I do try to be pickier with my physical reads than my audiobooks. Then there's a 2-part series that starts with the book Malice. I don't remember what Malice was about. In Malice, a novelist is found murdered in his home, and there's a question of whether his books were originally written by him or not. This one kind of drug out a little bit, but I still enjoyed it. I thought it was a good listen. The second book in this series, called Newcomer, was actually probably my favorite book that I have read from this man. It told a whole bunch of little stories surrounding a murder of a woman in her apartment. So one by one, you're following a whole bunch of little leads that this detective has gone on that all, up until the mystery is solved, were kind of either red herrings or just a small piece of the puzzle. I just found this a very, very interesting way to tell the story. I loved seeing into so many characters' lives, although it's a little bit disturbing to think about the police seeing this much of people's lives. But anyway, I just found this one much more engaging than previous ones, and I connected with characters a lot more. I just really, really liked this book. I hope that he writes more like this. So that is everything that I read in October. I feel like I didn't read that much, but it was just because I mostly read from 2 authors. So I did want to share as well. I just have some quick footage from a wonderful experience that I had yesterday. I went to the Immersive Van Gogh experience, and it was lovely. I was a little bit concerned because after I bought the tickets, I started seeing it advertised aggressively everywhere, and I was a little bit afraid that it was going to be kind of, I don't know, gimmicky or something, but honestly, it was wonderful. The one that I went to was just a very large room, and it was like a 35-minute video art installation, and you could sit through it as many times as you wanted. It was almost like meditating, like your mind just kind of cleared of everything but just sitting there and experiencing it. Thank you for watching. If you have anything that you read in October or are looking forward to reading in November that you want to discuss, definitely leave it in the comments, and I will see you in my next video. Thank you!